I could not fail, not again. Her granddaughter's cry, diluted by the 74º wind, echoed in Anya's aged soul. The old YAKUT woman's heart beat like a war drum as she advanced, spear trembling in hand, against the darkness engulfing the small village. The air froze her lungs with each breath, and the macabre howl that tore through the polar silence confirmed her greatest fear. A horde. Breaking through the icy curtain of snow, however, what she saw were not just shadows. They were hundreds, perhaps 800 pairs of gleaming, hungry eyes, surrounding the sole reason for her existence, and the sight made her collapse, her world spinning in a vortex of despair and ice. Anya's collapse was another blow from winter, but not the last. The sharp ice of the tundra pierced her thin garments, and the wind, an ancestral lament, tried to tear her from the ground with invisible claws. But her granddaughter's cry, still echoing in her mind, was an invisible thread pulling her back from the abyss. With a groan lost in the blizzard's fury, Anya forced her trembling arms against the compacted snow. Every muscle protested, every bone seemed to splinter, but the image of the girl's frightened face, the last spark of her lineage, was a fire burning in her chest, warming her against the deadly cold. Her eyes, clouded by age and frozen tears, fixed on the dark, shimmering mass ahead. 800 pairs of eyes, she repeated to herself, a prayer, a curse. 800 hungry predators between her and all that remained. With a strength that seemed to come from centuries of YAKUT resilience, Anya managed to rise, staggering. The spear, her lifelong companion, was firmly clutched, its polished cold wood offering strange comfort in her wrinkled hands. She knew she was no hunter, not anymore. Her fragility was a heavy burden, but her will was iron-forged in winter. She took one step, then another, her body bent against the wind that seemed to want to push her back to the village's safety. Snow whipped her face, turning into ice needles that stung her wrinkled, exposed skin. The cold was a constant pain, an invisible enemy that stalked her with every beat of her exhausted heart. As Anya advanced, the figure of her granddaughter, small and vulnerable, became clearer through the curtain of snow. The girl was huddled, arms wrapped around her knees, and her crying, now clearer, tore at Anya's heart. For a brief moment, the elder felt despair, the certainty that the number of predators was overwhelming. But then, something strange caught her attention, something that contradicted the expected ferocity. The leopards. They didn't seem to be attacking. There was none of the frenzy one would expect from a hungry horde. Instead, they formed a dense circle, like a living barrier, and their gazes, though intense, were not fixed on the girl with the predatory ferocity Anya expected. There was a strange stillness, a different tension in the air, something her ancestral wisdom could not decipher. Anya gripped the spear tighter, cold sweat trickling down her temples, mixing with the ice on her eyebrows. Doubt, a new and insidious obstacle, gnawed at her determination. What was happening there, beneath the storm's mantle? Her heart hammered, not just from exertion, but from growing perplexity. She needed to get closer, needed to see with her own eyes, to unravel the mystery. Each step was a silent prayer, a plea to the spirits of the tundra to guide her. The connection with her granddaughter was an unbreakable bond, and Anya knew that even if death awaited her, she would not retreat. Her entire life had been a dance with the wild, and now in the twilight she faced the greatest of enigmas, driven only by love. Her ragged breath was the only sound she heard, besides the wind's howl and her granddaughter's cry, which now seemed to come from a deeper, more dangerous place, almost an echo from the depths of the frozen earth. Her ragged breath was the only sound she heard, besides the wind's howl and her granddaughter's cry, which now seemed to come from a deeper, more dangerous place, almost an echo from the depths of the frozen earth. Anya squinted, trying to discern shapes in the dancing gloom of the blizzard. Each step was a battle against exhaustion and uncertainty. The spear, once a symbol of attack, now seemed like a staff of support, an extension of her own stubborn will. She was a few meters from the circle of predators, and the cold emanating from them was not just that of the tundra, but a shiver of mystery. The leopards, their spotted coats blending with the snow and darkness, looked like living statues, their bodies tense, but not in aggression. Anya noticed a subtle movement among them, not a growl, not a charge, but a kind of vigil. Some had their heads lowered, sniffing the ground, while others gazed into the void, beyond what Anya could see. Her granddaughter's intermittent, faint crying confirmed the girl's presence, but the direction of the sound was what disturbed her most. It didn't come from within the circle the leopards formed, but seemed to emerge from beneath them, as if the earth had swallowed her precious spark. A new wave of panic, cold and sharp, swept through Anya's already exhausted body. She stretched out her wrinkled hand, as if she could touch the sound, feel its origin. With a final effort of will, Anya pushed herself forward. The nearest leopards reacted, not with hostility, but with a coordinated movement, opening a small gap in the living barrier. It was as if nature, in its impenetrable wisdom, was inviting her to witness. Through the opening, Anya's clouded eyes finally caught the unfolding scene. It wasn't the firm ground of the tundra her granddaughter stood on, but a dark crevice, an abyss torn in the ice and earth. And there, huddled at the bottom, was her granddaughter, eyes wide with fear and cold. But she was not alone. Beside her, a small leopard cub, with a visibly injured paw, whimpered softly, nestled against the girl's body. The image struck her with the force of lightning. The 800 leopards were not there to attack her granddaughter. They were there to protect her, or perhaps to protect the cub, and, by extension, the girl who embraced it. The spear slipped from Anya's numb hands, falling onto the snow with a muffled thud. The thin tundra air seemed to suck all the oxygen from her lungs. Anya's mind, which had prepared for battle, for the fury of the hunt, now faced a truth that transcended any human or animal logic she knew. Nature had intervened in a way that defied her deepest understanding. Anya's aged body, already at the limit of its endurance, could not bear the weight of the revelation. Her knees gave way, and she collapsed onto the icy snow once more. This time, it wasn't the exhaustion of the journey or the fear of predators that brought her down, but the magnitude of unexpected compassion, the complexity of the scene unfolding before her eyes. Her spirit broken not by defeat, but by perplexity and the new, overwhelming reality. Frozen tears streamed down her wrinkled face, mixing with the ice crystals that whipped her face. Her granddaughter's cry and the cub's whimper echoed in her mind. But now they carried a new meaning, a silent plea for help that went beyond species barriers, a bond forged in the most brutal adversity. Anya felt the ice penetrate her clothes, but the physical pain was a whisper compared to the storm raging in her soul. Her eyes, once clouded with tears and effort, now fixed on the scene below, searching for every detail of that unexpected truth. Her granddaughter, her small spark of life, was not being threatened by the predators. She was, in some way, part of a circle of protection, a fragile but powerful link with the wild. The injured cub, nestled against the girl, was the key, the piece that united what seemed impossible. Anya's mind, accustomed to the brutal logic of tundra survival, struggled to assimilate. 800 leopards, terrifying in their number, acting as guardians. A tremor ran through her body, not from cold, but from a deep and overwhelming understanding. Nature, in its mysterious wisdom, had woven a plot that defied the ancestral enmity between man and beast. It was not a battle to be fought with a spear, but a harmony to be found with the heart. Anya closed her eyes for an instant, breathing deeply the icy air. which now seemed to carry not only the threat of winter, but also the whisper of ancient spirits, inviting her to see beyond the obvious. Her grandmother, the village's great healer, used to say that animals were mirrors of the soul, and that in every creature resided a part of the great spirit of the tundra. With an almost inaudible groan, Anya forced herself to stand again, her muscles protesting, but her mind now clear, focused on a new purpose. The spear, fallen in the snow, remained there. It would no longer be needed. Her eyes scanned the circle of leopards, one by one. They watched her, their gazes intense, but devoid of the aggression she had expected. There was a curiosity, a shared vigilance. Anya, with slow and deliberate gestures, brought her wrinkled hand to her chest, an ancient gesture of respect and peace. It was a silent acknowledgement, a bridge built without words. The leopards responded with an almost imperceptible movement. Their heads tilted slightly, their bodies relaxed a little, but the protective barrier around the crevice remained intact. It was a silent truce, a tacit agreement. They allowed her to be there, but the responsibility to act was hers. Anya approached the crevice, kneeling with difficulty on the slippery edge. The wind, still merciless, tried to push her, but her determination was a shield. Down below, about 4 meters away, her granddaughter looked up at her with wide eyes, her face pale and stained with tears and dirt. The cub, trembling with cold and pain, let out faint whimpers. Anya reached out to her granddaughter, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. "My little star," she whispered, her voice hoarse from cold and emotion. "Don't be afraid. Grandma is here." The elder's heart tightened at the sight of the girl's vulnerability, but also her courage in having embraced the injured cub. It was an act of pure altruism, a reflection of the values Anya had always tried to instill in her. The flickering light of the blizzard revealed the depth of the crevice and the precariousness of the situation. There was no way to descend without risk, and climbing back up would be even harder with her granddaughter and the cub. Anya needed something, a rope, a strong tether. Her eyes swept the landscape, searching for any resource the tundra might offer. A twisted branch, a protruding rock, anything that could serve. The leopards now seemed to watch her with a strange expectation, as if they understood the urgency of her search. The elder knew the truce was fragile, demanding wisdom and speed. Time was her most relentless enemy, the cold stealing the strength from her granddaughter and the cub. She needed to act, not as a warrior, but as a guardian, using not brute force, but the intelligence and compassion that nature, so unexpectedly, had taught her on that icy day. Anya's mind worked with lightning speed, sifting through memories of a lifetime in the tundra. The spear was there, but it was too rigid. Her garments were made of fur, but tearing them would mean exposing herself even more to the deadly cold. Anya's gaze fell upon her own belt, made of reindeer leather, strong and flexible, braided by her own hands decades ago. It was a piece of her, an extension of her history, and now it would be the tool for her granddaughter's future. With fingers stiffened by the cold, she began to untie the knots that fastened it to her waist. Every movement was slow, painful, but laden with purpose. The leopards, once mere observers, now seemed more attentive. One of them, the largest and darkest, with scars that told stories of past winters, stepped forward, its eyes fixed on Anya. There was no threat, only a deep intensity, a sharing of the urgency. Anya felt a shiver, not of fear, but of recognition. It was as if the spirit of the tundra, through that majestic animal, was approving her plan. She completely untied the belt, extending it. It was long enough, perhaps 3 meters, but not enough to reach her granddaughter at the bottom of the crevice. Anya looked around again, desperate. Her eyes fell upon a dwarf willow bush, twisted and resilient, clinging tenaciously to the edge of the crevice. Its branches, though thin, were surprisingly strong and flexible. With immense effort, she broke off one of the longest and sturdiest branches, feeling the searing pain in her hands. Quickly, she tied one end of the belt firmly to the branch, creating an extension. The branch would serve as a hook for her granddaughter to hold, and the belt as the rope. It was an improvised solution, but the only one the tundra offered. With her heart pounding, Anya knelt again at the edge of the crevice. "My little star," she called, her voice a little firmer. "Grandma is going to throw this down to you. Hold tight to the branch and I will pull." Her granddaughter, with tear-filled eyes, nodded, childlike trust shining on her pale face. The leopard cub, sensing the movement, let out a faint whimper and nestled closer to the girl. Anya took a deep breath, concentrating all her strength and ancestral wisdom on that moment. She needed to be precise. One mistake could be fatal for everyone. Carefully, she lowered the branch with the belt tied to it, guiding it gently into the crevice. The wind tried to deflect it, but Anya used her experience to counteract the invisible force, her eyes fixed on her granddaughter. The leopards, in absolute silence, watched every movement, their shadows dancing with the snow, a wild and expectant audience. The tip of the branch finally reached her granddaughter, brushing her icy fingers. "Take it, my flower," Anya murmured, her voice almost inaudible, her heart in her throat. The girl stretched out her trembling hands, her small fingers pale, and gripped the branch with what strength she had left, clutching it as if it were the only solid thing in her crumbling world. It was the first step of an uncertain rescue. Anya felt a slight tug and, with a groan of effort that was lost in the wind, began to pull on the belt. Her aged muscles screamed, but she ignored the pain, focused only on bringing her granddaughter to safety. Hope, fragile as a snowflake, hung in the icy tundra air. As the fate of 3 lives, the elder, the granddaughter, and the cub, balanced on the edge of the crevice. Anya felt the weight of her granddaughter and the cub, a burden that seemed to crush her aged shoulders. Every inch of belt pulled was a battle against gravity, against the cold that numbed her fingers and the searing pain that ran through her arms. Her feet slipped on the loose ice of the edge, and the merciless wind tried to drag her into the abyss along with her precious cargo. But the image of her granddaughter's pale face, the trust in her eyes, was a balm for her exhaustion, an inexhaustible source of strength that seemed to spring from her ancestral roots. Down below, her granddaughter clung to the branch with surprising tenacity, her small fingers white and stiff but firm. The leopard cub, feeling suspended in the icy air, let out frightened whimpers, but the girl held it tight against her chest, offering it warmth and the only safety she could. Her eyes, fixed on her grandmother's wrinkled face, were a mixture of fear and unwavering faith. She trusted Anya, just as she trusted that the sun would rise again after the longest night. With each pull, the girl pushed herself with her feet against the icy walls of the crevice, scratching the ice, helping her grandmother with the little strength she had left. The 800 leopards formed a silent semicircle, their spotted coats almost invisible in the blizzard's gloom. Their eyes, once intense and mysterious, now seemed to carry a shared vigilance, an almost palpable expectation. There were no growls, no aggressive movements, only the stillness of predators who had become witnesses, and perhaps guardians. The largest of them, the scarred leopard, was closer, its head slightly tilted, as if it understood the delicacy of that moment. Anya felt the weight of their gazes, not as a threat, but as a silent encouragement. Slowly, painfully, her granddaughter began to emerge from the crevice. First, the top of her head, covered by the fur hood, then her small shoulders, and finally, her face stained with dirt and tears, but with a faint smile of relief. The leopard cub, still nestled, trembled visibly, but its whimpers were less frequent. Anya, with a final effort that made her stumble, pulled her granddaughter to the safety of the edge. The girl's body, stiff with cold, released the branch and fell into her grandmother's arms, who embraced her with unexpected strength. Feeling the child's fragile warmth, The leopard cub, freed from the embrace, rolled in the snow, letting out a whimper of pain as it touched its injured paw. But before it could move away, her granddaughter, even exhausted, reached out and pulled it back close, stroking its head with tenderness. Anya watched the scene, her heart overflowing with complex emotion. The truce with the leopards seemed to extend to her granddaughter, who had formed an unexpected bond with the small predator. The cold was still lacerating, the blizzard relentless, but the sense of relief was immense. With her granddaughter safe in her arms, Anya looked at the circle of leopards. The large, scarred leopard took another step forward, its eyes fixed on the elder and the child. Anya, her voice choked with emotion and cold, whispered, "Thank you, spirits of the tundra. Thank you, guardians." It was an acknowledgement, a promise of respect. That gesture, that gaze, sealed a silent truce, an understanding that transcended words and species barriers. Her granddaughter, nestled in her grandmother's lap, looked at the leopards with childlike curiosity, without fear, as if she understood they had been her protectors. Anya knew the journey was not over. The village was still distant, and the deadly cold remained a constant threat. But now she was not alone. Her granddaughter was safe, and the presence of the leopards, once a source of terror, had transformed into a symbol of an unexpected connection. A lesson that true resilience lies in the ability to find humanity even in the wildest of winters. With a sigh that turned to vapor in the icy air, Anya hugged her granddaughter close, feeling the fragile warmth of her small spark of life, a reminder that, even in the most extreme conditions, love and compassion could flourish. Anya pressed her granddaughter against her chest, feeling the fragile warmth of her small spark of life, a reminder that, even in the most extreme conditions, love and compassion could flourish. The girl, still trembling, nestled into her grandmother's embrace, her face hidden in the soft fur of the coat. The leopard cub, with its injured paw, whimpered softly, a melody of pain and vulnerability echoing in Anya's soul. Her wrinkled eyes, now clearer with emotion than with tears, fixed on the cub's small spotted body. The paw was swollen, with a deep cut that bled slowly, mixing with the snow. It was a sight that squeezed the elder's heart. She knew that, without help, the cub would not survive long in those temperatures. The 800 leopards, once a living barrier, now formed a wider circle, their eyes fixed on Anya and the two small beings she protected. The large, scarred leopard, the leader, took another step forward, its breath forming dense clouds in the icy air. There was no threat in its gaze, but an expectation, a silent plea that Anya, with her ancestral wisdom, understood perfectly. They had trusted her to rescue the cub, and now they expected her to do something more. The truce was not just for her granddaughter's safety, it was for the life of the small predator. Anya felt the weight of responsibility on her tired shoulders. The village was far, the blizzard relentless, and with each passing minute, the cold stole more of the cub's life. The instinct for survival screamed at her to turn back, to protect her granddaughter above all else. But the leopard's gaze, the trust in its wild eyes, and the cub's whimper touched a deep chord in her heart. That small, vulnerable being had been the catalyst for an improbable union, a link between two species that the tundra had forced to coexist. With a sigh that turned to vapor, Anya knelt in the snow, ignoring the pain in her aged knees. Gently, she moved her granddaughter aside, who still held the cub with protective strength. "My little star," she whispered. "We need to help this little one. He is very injured." Her granddaughter, with her large, curious eyes, nodded, childlike understanding shining on her face. She had already shown a compassion that transcended fear. Anya examined the cub's paw with stiffened fingers. The cut was deep, and the surrounding snow was stained red. She needed to stop the bleeding and warm the cub, but she had nothing but her own clothes and the wisdom the tundra had taught her. Her eyes swept the landscape again, searching for a solution. There were no healing herbs, no clean cloths, only ice, snow, and the silent presence of the leopards. It was then that the large, scarred leopard did something unexpected. It approached even closer, not to attack, but to lie down in the snow a few meters from Anya, exposing its flank. Its eyes fixed on hers, and a low growl, almost a purr, escaped its throat. It was not a sound of threat, but of invitation. Anya felt a shiver run down her spine. It was an offer, a help. The warmth of the leopard's body, even at a distance, was perceptible. The elder looked at the cub, then at the pack leader. That gesture, that trust, was the turning point. It was not just about rescuing her granddaughter, but about healing, about building a bridge of compassion. The challenge was no longer just about surviving the cold and the predators, but about collaborating with them, trusting in nature's wisdom that manifested in such unexpected ways. Anya knew what she had to do. It was an immense risk, madness for anyone who didn't understand the silent language of the tundra, but it was the cub's only chance, and perhaps the only way to truly seal the truce. She needed warmth and protection for the cub, and the leopard was offering exactly that. With a determined look, Anya took the cub from her granddaughter, who watched her with curiosity. She slowly crawled towards the large leopard, her heart pounding, but her mind clear. The leader did not move, only watched her, its eyes fixed. It was a leap of faith, a gamble on the humanity and animality that united her in that moment. She carefully placed the injured cub beside the leopard's warm body, which, with a gentle, protective movement, curved over the small one, offering it its warmth and a barrier against the merciless wind. Anya then began to tear a piece of her own fur garment to improvise a dressing. The journey back to the village would have to wait. The cub's life was now her priority, a new link in the web of her existence. Anya felt the roughness of the reindeer hide under her stiffened fingers as she tore a piece of her garment. The fabric, hardened by the cold, gave way with a dry sound, exposing her shoulder, but the pain was ignored. The urgency to save the cub was greater. With the hide in hand, she leaned over the cub's small body, which trembled less, nestled in the leader's protective warmth. The large feline watched Anya with amber eyes, a silent guardian. Her granddaughter, still embraced by her grandmother, stretched her neck, her eyes fixed on the scene with fascination and concern. With her fingertips, Anya delicately removed the ice and snow from the cub's wound. The cut was deep, revealing vulnerable flesh. She blew her warm breath over the wound to warm it. Her granddaughter imitated the gesture, blowing too, a breath of tenderness. Shenya used a clean corner of the torn hide to gently press the wound, staunching the bleeding. The cub whimpered faintly, but did not pull away. Its trust in the elder was palpable. The 800 leopards, once threatening, were now a comforting presence, a circle of silence and expectation. The leader, with a slow movement, licked the cub's head, a gesture of affection that warmed Anya's heart. It was an acceptance, an acknowledgement of her intention. Carefully, Anya wrapped the cub's injured paw with a piece of hide, tying it with thin strips. It wasn't a perfect dressing, but it would offer protection against the cold and dirt. "There, my little warrior," she whispered, stroking the cub's head. Her granddaughter, with a faint smile, reached out and stroked it. That innocent touch proved the connection formed. Anya felt the exhaustion, but the sight of the comfortable cub and her safe granddaughter renewed her spirit. The blizzard, however, offered no respite. The wind howled, snowflakes fell densely, covering the ground. The village was hours away, and the sun was setting, promising an even colder and more dangerous night. Anya knew they couldn't stay there. The cub needed shelter, constant warmth, and healing herbs that she didn't have. How to move it without disturbing the truce, and how to protect her granddaughter on the arduous journey back, with darkness approaching. The large, scarred leopard, as if reading her thoughts, slowly stood up, It looked at Anya, at the cub, and then at a dark rock formation, a small cave, a natural shelter against the storms. It was a clear invitation. The leopards not only allowed her to care for the cub, but were willing to guide them to a safe place. Mutual trust had deepened. Anya felt a lump in her throat. Her grandmother's ancestral wisdom about harmony with nature had never seemed so real. With a nod, she accepted the silent invitation. "Let's go, my little star," she said to her granddaughter, helping her up. "The spirits of the tundra guide us." Her granddaughter, holding her grandmother's hand, looked at the leader leopard with a smile. The 800 leopards began to move, forming a procession, clearing a path in the snow, guiding Anya, her granddaughter, and the cub to the shelter. It was an improbable journey, led by predators, but full of renewed hope, a testament to the ability to find humanity in the wildest of winters. The connection between species, forged in adversity, was now a beacon of light in the imminent darkness. Anya followed the leopards, her heart still pounding with the strange dance between fear and gratitude. The 800 felines moved with silent grace, their slender, spotted silhouettes barely visible in the icy gloom, carving a path through the deep snow. They were no longer a threat, but guides, their strong bodies forming a barrier against the biting wind, protecting the small humans from its own fury. Her granddaughter, nestled in her arms, trembled with cold and fatigue, but her eyes, every now and then, opened to observe the big cats with fearless curiosity, a sign of the childlike purity Anya so valued. The injured cub, carefully wrapped in the piece of hide, was carried by Anya alongside her granddaughter, its fragile warmth a constant reminder of the shared responsibility. Every step Anya took was agony. Her knees creaked, her muscles burned, and the icy air cut into her lungs. The spear, once a symbol of her determination, now served as a precarious support, helping her maintain balance on the slippery terrain. Exhaustion threatened to fell her, but the weight of her granddaughter in her arms and the small life of the cub in her garment were anchors pulling her forward. She looked at the large, scarred leopard leading the group and felt a strange strength, a deep connection that transcended the barrier of species. It was as if the tundra, in its vast and merciless wisdom, was whispering ancient secrets about the interdependence of all creatures. The leader, every now and then, turned its head, its amber eyes meeting Anya's. There was no judgment, only a silent understanding, an acknowledgement of her effort. At one point, one of the younger leopards, with lighter fur, approached her granddaughter, sniffing the air near her face. The girl, instead of being frightened, extended her small hand and touched the animal's soft fur, which retreated gently, without any aggression, just a respectful curiosity. Anya felt a wave of emotion. Her granddaughter, in her innocence, was teaching everyone a lesson about trust and acceptance. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the darkness of the rock formation materialized ahead. It was a deep recess, protected by a natural overhang that diverted the wind and snow. The relief was almost unbearable. The leopards stopped at the entrance, forming a semicircle, allowing Anya and her granddaughter to enter first. The air inside the cave was less biting, a refuge from the blizzard's fury. Anya crawled inside, feeling the rocky ground beneath her feet, a welcome contrast to the shifting snow. She sat down, leaning against the cold wall, and her granddaughter collapsed into her lap, exhausted. The leopard cub, still wrapped, let out a stronger whimper as it was placed on the ground. Anya examined it again. The wound seemed stable, but the cold was still a threat. The large, scarred leopard entered the cave, followed by a few others, the largest and oldest. They lay down in a protective circle around Anya, her granddaughter, and the cub, their warm bodies radiating an unexpected heat, transforming the icy shelter into an improvised nest of safety. Anya looked into the leader's eyes. which watched her with calm intensity. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice choked. It was more than gratitude, it was an oath, a promise that she would do everything she could to honor that truce. Her granddaughter, asleep, sighed softly, and the cub, feeling the warmth of the big cats, nestled closer, its whimpers subsiding. The elder felt a deep peace, an understanding that life, even in the most adverse conditions, would always find a way, a connection. The blizzard howled outside, but inside the cave, a new kind of warmth had ignited, a fire of compassion and unity. There was still the journey back to the village, the need for more adequate care for the cub, and the explanation to the villagers about this improbable alliance. But for now, in that moment suspended in time, Anya knew she had made the right choice. The wisdom of the tundra was not just about surviving, but about coexisting, about finding humanity where it was least expected, even in the wild hearts of predators. The challenge was great, but hope now was even greater. She hugged her granddaughter tightly, feeling the pulse of life, a miracle amidst the ice. Anya hugged her granddaughter tightly, feeling the pulse of life, a miracle amidst the ice. The warmth of the leopards' bodies, once an inconceivable threat, was now a balm, a living blanket that kept the biting cold out of the cave. The elder closed her eyes for an instant, allowing exhaustion to overcome her, but only for a brief moment. A YAKUT mind, forged in merciless winters, did not allow the luxury of complete rest while there was danger or responsibility. She opened her eyes again, watching her granddaughter, who slept deeply, her face serene despite the dirt and the dry tear tracks. The girl was safe, and that was what mattered. Beside them, the leopard cub whimpered softly, nestled between the paws of the great leader. The paw wound, though clean and bandaged with reindeer hide, was still a cause for great concern. Anya knew the dressing was only a temporary measure. The small body needed constant warmth, yes, but also absolute rest, and ideally some herbal infusion she used to soothe pain and fight infections, herbs that were in the village days away under the uninterrupted fury of the blizzard. The large scarred leopard, as if sensing Anya's restlessness, raised its head. Its amber eyes, which once carried the ferocity of the tundra, now displayed a depth of understanding. It growled softly, a sound not of warning, but of comfort, and licked the cub's head, a gesture Anya interpreted as a promise of protection. The other leopards in the cave also seemed at peace, their slow, deep breaths filling the small space with a wild and comforting rhythm. Anya thought of the village. How would she explain what had happened? That the most feared predators of the tundra had become guardians? That her granddaughter had formed a bond with a leopard cub? The villagers, accustomed to the constant struggle against nature, would view this alliance with distrust, perhaps even fear. It would be a challenge as great as the blizzard itself, a social and emotional obstacle that would demand all her wisdom and patience. But the image of her granddaughter, with her faint smile of relief and the trust in the leader leopard's eyes, were enough for Anya to know there was no other choice. She needed to honor this truce, this unexpected connection. The wind howled furiously outside, but inside the cave, the temperature was tolerable. Anya stretched her stiffened fingers, feeling the warmth emanating from the felines' bodies. It was a warmth that not only warmed her body, but also her soul, rekindling the flame of hope. She knew the journey back would be arduous, but now she had allies. It wasn't just the leopards protecting her, but the tundra itself seemed to have orchestrated this union, a reminder that life was more complex and interconnected than one could imagine. With a sigh, Anya began to plan. First, the cub needed more warmth and rest, and she would need to closely monitor the wound, changing the improvised dressing if necessary. Then she would need to find a way to signal the village, If the blizzard lessened enough for someone to see or hear them, but above all, she needed to protect her granddaughter and the small leopard, who were now part of her family, in a way that transcended blood and species. The elder looked at the leader leopard, and an almost imperceptible nod passed between them, a silent pact of mutual responsibility. The truce was sealed, and the journey back, though uncertain, would be made together. True resilience, she knew, was not just about surviving, but about building bridges, even in the wildest conditions of the YAKUT winter, finding humanity in every heart, wild or not. Anya knew that waiting in the cave could not extend indefinitely. The cub, though warm, needed profound care, and the village was the only place to find it. The wind outside redoubled its fury, whipping the entrance with gusts of snow and ice. It was a heavy decision, to stay and risk the cub, or to face the storm, trusting in the extraordinary alliance. Her eyes fixed on the large, scarred leopard. It watched her with intensity. Anya felt an ancestral impulse. Inaction was the greatest danger. With a slow nod, she indicated the exit. The leader leopard, without hesitation, stood up. Its movements were powerful and silent. The other felines, as one body, formed a protective circle. Her granddaughter, waking with the wind's howl, looked at Anya with childlike trust. "Shall we go, Grandma?" she whispered. Anya squeezed the girl's hand. "Yes, my little star. The spirits of the tundra call us." She picked up the cub, which whimpered louder, and nestled it in her garment, feeling its fragile warmth. Upon leaving the cave, the blizzard hit them with full force, an icy punch. The air was an impenetrable white mass, visibility almost zero. The wind howled like 1,000 hungry wolves, trying to tear them from the ground. Anya staggered, her exhausted body fighting against the pressure. The spear barely helped her. The large leopard positioned itself in front of her, its massive body serving as a living shield. Other leopards grouped together, forming a wall of fur and muscle, creating a bubble of calm. Her granddaughter, frightened by the gale, clung to her grandmother. Anya felt the girl's fragility, but also the strength of the circle of wild protectors. Every step was a battle. The snow reached her knees, and hidden ice threatened a fall. Suddenly, the ground gave way under Anya's foot. She slipped, her heart leaping. Panic overwhelmed her. Her granddaughter let out a muffled cry. But before Anya could fall, one of the nearest leopards extended its front paw, allowing Anya to lean on its muscular flank. The touch was saving. The great leader growled, and the other leopards tightened the circle, moving in sync. Anya regained her balance, her breath ragged. She looked at the leopard that had helped her, expressing gratitude. The animal merely watched her, without threat, only determination and respect. It was the climax of the journey, where trust was complete, and the line between predator and protector had dissolved, revealing a new truth. The lives of the cub, her granddaughter, and herself depended on the pack. The village seemed a distant dream, but with the leopards clearing the way, hope became more tangible. Exhaustion gnawed at Anya, but the cub and her granddaughter's warmth were the fuel. The leader leopard, with a final nod, indicated the way. The truce was a reality in motion, a dance of survival in the relentless tundra, woven with compassion and courage. Anya, with her granddaughter nestled in her arms and the leopard cub in her garment, felt every fiber of her being cry out for rest. But the sight of the leader leopard ahead, clearing a path through the deep snow, was a beacon. The 800 felines moved like a living current, their robust bodies deflecting the biting wind, each step a silent promise of protection. The blizzard, which once seemed an insatiable monster, began to subside, its gusts diminishing, and the white curtain of snow became less dense. Through the opening gaps, Anya glimpsed the familiar silhouette of the village huts, still distant but now visible. A wave of relief and apprehension washed over her. relief at being close to home, apprehension about how her villagers would react. The first signs of human life emerged, a faint smoke rising from a chimney, the distant bark of a dog. The leopards, sensitive to the change in environment, slowed their pace. The leader turned, its amber eyes fixed on Anya, as if asking if she was ready for the next challenge. She nodded, pressing her granddaughter close. The girl, now more alert, observed her surroundings with a mixture of curiosity and fatigue. The cub, on her chest, let out a faint whimper, reminding her of the urgency of its situation. When they finally reached the clearing preceding the village, the blizzard had transformed into a light drizzle of flakes, and visibility was almost total. The villagers, who had spent hours in despair watching the storm, began to emerge from their homes. Their faces, marked by worry, transformed into a mixture of shock and terror upon seeing Anya, the fragile elder, not alone, but flanked by a horde of leopards. Cries of alarm echoed, and men wielded their spears and bows, ready for battle. Anya, raising her free hand, stepped forward, her voice hoarse but firm. "Stop! There is no danger!" She collapsed to her knees, not from weakness, but in a gesture of supplication and respect, her granddaughter still in her arms. The leopard stopped, the leader in front of her, its eyes fixed on the villagers. Her granddaughter, feeling her grandmother's tremor, lifted her head and with an innocent smile reached out to the cub in her garment. "Grandma saved the baby leopard," she exclaimed, her childlike voice breaking the tension. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with disbelief. The villagers, confused, slowly lowered their weapons. The village shaman, a man of ancient wisdom, approached cautiously. He observed Anya, her granddaughter, and then the leopards, his eyes scanning the injured cub. "What does this mean, Anya?" he asked, his voice grave. Anya, her voice choked with emotion and cold, narrated the story, from her granddaughter's cry in the crevice to the silent truce. She spoke of the leopard's compassion, of the interconnectedness of life in the tundra. As she spoke, the great leader leopard lay down, a gesture of submission and trust. The other felines followed its example, their bodies relaxed, their presences now less threatening. Her granddaughter, seeing the shaman, extended the cub to him. "He's hurt," she said, her eyes full of tears. The shaman, with a deep sigh, gently took the small animal. The paw wound was visible, and the cub's fragility was undeniable. The scene, the exhausted elder, the innocent child, and the peaceful predators, touched the villagers' hearts. An elderly woman, a healer, ran to fetch herbs and clean cloths. Other villagers approached, no longer with fear but with a reverent curiosity. The truce was established not just with the leopards, but between human fear and ancestral wisdom. The cub would be cared for, and the village, once isolated in its struggle, had found a new way to coexist. Anya, exhausted but with a heart overflowing, felt humanity blossom in the wildest of winters. Anya, exhausted but with a heart overflowing, felt humanity blossom in the wildest of winters. The shaman, with the leopard cub in his arms, looked at the elder with new reverence. His eyes, witnesses to generations of struggles against nature, now saw a deeper truth. The healer, with nimble hands and a kind heart, was already beside the shaman, carefully examining the cub's wound. She murmured soft words, mixing herbs into an earthy, healing paste. The villagers, once in a panic, watched in silence, their faces reflecting admiration and cautious curiosity. Her granddaughter, safe in her grandmother's arms, began to doze, the tension dissipating from her small body. Anya squeezed her, feeling the girl's warmth, living proof that her journey had not been in vain. The great leader leopard, with amber eyes fixed on the scene, seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. It remained lying down, a statue of wild dignity, while the other leopards gradually moved away, keeping a respectful distance, but without disappearing. They formed a semicircle at the edge of the clearing. Their presence is a constant reminder of the newly formed truce. The shaman, after a brief conversation with the healer, gestured to some young people. "Prepare the healing tent. The little one needs warmth and rest." The young people moved promptly, setting up a small tent warmed with furs and a brazier. The cub was carefully carried inside, the healer following it, her movements full of purpose. Her granddaughter was gently taken from Anya's arms by one of the village women, who led her to a warm hut, promising food and peaceful sleep. Anya, finally free from the girl's weight, felt her legs weaken. The shaman approached, extending a hand to help her. "You did the impossible, Anya," he said, his voice laden with respect. "You showed us that strength is not just in the spear, but in the heart." She looked at the leopards, who now watched the village with surprising calm. "They also showed us," Anya replied, her voice choked, "that the tundra has its own ways, and that compassion can flourish even in the harshest of winters." In the days that followed, the village witnessed an extraordinary change. The leopard cub, named Yarik, meaning light in YAKUT, slowly recovered under the care of the healer and her granddaughter, who refused to leave its side. The girl spent hours in the healing tent, singing soft songs to Yarik, whose whimpers of pain lessened each day. The adult leopards, led by the large, scarred feline, remained in the vicinity of the village. They did not invade human space, but their presence was constant, a silent sentinel watching over their cub's recovery. At first, the villagers remained cautious, but the sight of her granddaughter playing with Yarik and the leopard's patience gradually dispelled their fear. Children curious began to observe the felines from afar, and even some hunters with their spears lowered approached to leave meat offerings at the forest's edge, a gesture of respect and gratitude. Anya's silent truce had transformed into a pact of coexistence, a bridge between two worlds that once seemed irreconcilable. Anya, sitting at the door of her hut, watched her granddaughter and Yarik play. Her eyes, once heavy with worry and exhaustion, now shone with a deep serenity. The spear which had accompanied her on her desperate journey leaned against the wall, a symbol of a battle won not by brute force, but by wisdom and compassion. She had proven that the true strength of a YAKUT lay not just in their ability to endure the cold, but in their skill to warm the world with the flame of understanding. The village shaman, now a fervent ally of the new order, frequently visited Anya. They talked for hours, sharing stories and visions about the future. He recognized in Anya not just a heroine, but a bridge between the human and wild worlds, a guardian of an ancient truth that had been forgotten. The village, through her, had rediscovered its connection with the tundra, learning to read nature's signs and respect its inhabitants. The village women, once fearful, now wove stories about Anya's courage and the leopard's loyalty. Children would grow up with these legends, learning that coexistence was possible, that compassion was a more powerful weapon than any spear. Anya's granddaughter, with her contagious smile and her unbreakable bond with Yarik, was the living proof of this new era. Anya closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the weak sun on her wrinkled face. The journey had been arduous, full of dangers and hopelessness, but every step, every sacrifice had been worth it. She was no longer the solitary elder on the brink of existence. She was the matriarch of a new era, the weaver of a pact that had transformed the wildest winter into a season of miracles. Life had found a way, and humanity, in its purest sense, had blossomed in the most unexpected hearts, in the most inhospitable of tundras. Days stretched into weeks, and the YAKUT winter, though stubborn in its persistence, began to show the first signs of a distant thaw. The snow, which once fell incessantly, now appeared in more spaced flakes, and the sun, still weak, dared to peek through the clouds with greater frequency. The village, once a bastion of isolated resistance, had transformed into a living testament to Anya's truce. YAKUT, the leopard cub, was no longer the fragile, whimpering being Anya had nestled in her garments. Its paw was completely healed, and it ran with surprising agility through the snow, chasing flakes and playing with Anya's granddaughter. The girl, in turn, had found in YAKUT not just a friend, but a soul brother. Their laughter echoed through the clearing, a pure sound that dispelled any lingering fear in the villagers' hearts. The adult leopards, led by the imposing scarred feline, kept their silent promise. They remained in the surrounding hills, their majestic silhouettes visible at dawn and dusk. They were no longer a threat, but silent guardians of the village. Hunters, venturing out into the tundra, found tracks of fresh prey left by the leopards, a gift from nature that ensured abundance in times of scarcity. The exchange was simple: respect and coexistence in return for protection and provision. Anya, sitting at the door of her hut, watched her granddaughter and YAKUT play. Her eyes, once heavy with worry and exhaustion, now shone with a deep serenity. The spear, which had accompanied her on her desperate journey, leaned against the wall, a symbol of a battle won not by brute force, but by wisdom and compassion. She had proven that the true strength of a YAKUT lay not just in their ability to endure the cold, but in their skill to warm the world with the flame of understanding. The village shaman, now a fervent ally of the new order, frequently visited Anya. They talked for hours, sharing stories and visions about the future. He recognized in Anya not just a heroine, but a bridge between the human and wild worlds, a guardian of an ancient truth that had been forgotten. The village, through her, had rediscovered its connection with the tundra, learning to read nature's signs and respect its inhabitants. The village women, once fearful, now wove stories about Anya's courage and the leopard's loyalty. Children would grow up with these legends, learning that coexistence was possible, that compassion was a more powerful weapon than any spear. Anya's granddaughter, with her contagious smile and her unbreakable bond with YAKUT, was the living proof of this new era. Anya closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the weak sun on her wrinkled face. The journey had been arduous, full of dangers and hopelessness, but every step, every sacrifice had been worth it. She was no longer the solitary elder on the brink of existence. She was the matriarch of a new era, the weaver of a pact that had transformed the wildest winter into a season of miracles. Life had found a way, and humanity, in its purest sense, had blossomed in the most unexpected hearts, in the most inhospitable of tundras.